Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this stimulus package update on a Friday. Today we have all sorts of news. We have a bunch on the Paycheck Protection program, some new guidelines there, some new expectations. We have some news on the EIDL grant program. We have some stimulus check news and how foreigners are somehow receiving stimulus checks. And I answer some of your questions regarding stimulus checks and the EIDL and just some random questions towards the end. So let's get right into it. In Paycheck Protection news, as of today, May 1st, 10.3% of small businesses have received their Paycheck Protection loan. This is up from 10.2% yesterday, which is another small increase, small daily increase. The day before that, it was another small increase. So it's kind of a bummer. I'm actually surprised at how slowly this has gone up this week. I was really expecting to see a big spike in numbers after that new funding was approved last Friday. So I like to remain hopeful. I expect to see some kind of spike maybe next week in the percentage of businesses that have actually received funding. At some point, there's going to have to be a spike in businesses who've received funding. Some more Paycheck Protection news. Secretary Mnuchin stated that all Paycheck Protection loans will be subject to audits. Dun, dun, dun. Now that sounds a little bit more extreme than it actually is. And it's pretty on par with what we already expected. However, if you receive a Paycheck Protection loan of under $2 million, really all this means is you're gonna have to prove what it's gonna be spent on. It's been known all along that you're gonna have to prove expenses as part of the loan. If you want it to be forgiven, you have to prove what it's spent on. So we were talking about that all along. Remember, eligible Paycheck Protection expenses are things like payroll, rent, mortgage payments, interest payments, accrued before the loan date. There's very few things that it can be spent on in order to be forgiven. And to be completely forgiven, 75% of the funds have to go towards payroll. However, if you received a loan of more than $2 million, this is where things change a little bit. They're saying that you will face a full audit if you receive a Paycheck Protection loan of more than $2 million. This is to prevent fraud because they are realizing that lenders were not doing very much due diligence to set up these loans in order to get them out as quickly as possible. There's no indication of how far back this audit is going to go. So if you are in a situation like that, you might want to do some more digging, ask your CPA what exactly to expect there. But they're claiming that they're going to do a full audit. Who knows if this is just a scare tactic to get people to either not accept loans or who knows. That's just hearsay. People have also been sending me some of their loan origination docs for the Paycheck Protection program, and I have some serious concerns with loan forgiveness. From the loan docs I've seen so far, the terms are very vague when it comes to forgiveness. And I've seen on several forms that forgiveness is subject to changes in the SBA's guidelines, which concerns me a lot personally because I don't like signing up or signing a paper for something that says the other party can change something later on, whether I like it or not. So here's how this will affect me if I get the Paycheck Protection loan. If forgiveness is guaranteed that I spend it on X, Y, and Z, then with my business, we're slower than we were in the average payroll period in the last 12 months. So that means in order to get full forgiveness for the loan amount, I'm going to have to give extra hours, things like working in the warehouse, working on systems, improving things, regular work hours in order to get that full payroll. However, if loan forgiveness might not happen or it's subject to changes, that may influence me to give less hours for things that aren't 100% necessary right now. So by them doing this, this could have some major negative consequences on the workforce as a whole if all businesses are subject to that, because then they're not going to be as open to giving quite as many hours. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to have to take a look into this personally once I receive my Paycheck Protection loan docs, but I really encourage you to look at your loan docs and ask your bankers questions if you can get in contact with them. On EIDL news, moving on, as of today, May 1st, according to COVIDLoanTracker.com, we are at 13% of small businesses have received funding from their EIDL grant, And this is up from 12.5% yesterday. So we're seeing a bigger jump than we did with Paycheck Protection, however, not a huge jump. I also expected this to jump up a little faster because they're not accepting new loans this week and possibly not next week. That's kind of up in the air still, but at least we're seeing some increases there. That loan portal is still closed as of today, and there's no news as to when they're going to open it. And I guess that's it, all I have for those two programs. Moving on to stimulus check news. According to Politico.com, thousands of foreign workers and students who are living overseas are actually receiving stimulus checks, believe it or not. And in a time when I know there's probably thousands of you watching right now who are like, I haven't even received my stimulus check and I live in the US. So the prime recipients that seem to be getting these accidentally are college-age workers who spent time in the US in the last 2 years. So I did some digging, and why this seems to be happening is a tax filing issue. So I guess it's a common issue for foreign workers on either an F1 or J1 visa to mistakenly fill out tax forms that are only supposed to be filled out by US residents. And normally this isn't an issue. However, if they do that, according to the IRS system, they think they're a resident and they're getting sent stimulus checks. So there's tons of people who are just like getting $1,200 and they're like, do I spend this? Do I return it? They can't contact the IRS to say like, hey, take this back. So it's kind of crazy. According to Politico, again, in a survey of more than 500 schools last week, 43% said they had students and scholars who believe they received a payment in error. So that's a huge percentage. I guess that this tax filing issue is pretty darn common. However, it's been nice to read that many of the people who have received their stimulus check are trying to return it or intend to return it. However, who knows how many people are actually going to keep it or have already spent it. And I mean, I'm not sure the IRS will have or does have a solid system in place to take those payments back, even if they wanted to, even if they could identify who received it wrongly, because if their systems say, hey, this person needs a stimulus check, what are they going to go through each person individually, one by one, and say like, oh, no, not them, let me try and get that payment back? I don't think they have a system that can do that. So that'll be interesting to see how exactly that plays out. And I only hope that people who aren't eligible send it back, and in that way, those funds can go towards other people who need it. Moving on to your questions. Ray Moreno asks, do I have to apply for a Paycheck Protection program through a bank? Yes, you do. Most banks, though, you can apply online, pretty much every bank, or you can go through like a fintech like PayPal or Cabbage or whichever one of those you prefer to go through. Samuel Ennins asks, what do I do? I'm still receiving the message on the stimulus portal. According to the information on file, we cannot determine your eligibility at this time. So this could happen for one of three reasons. The first reason being you're not eligible for a stimulus payment, which you should know if you're not. Second reason is you're required to file a tax return for 2018 or 2019 and you have not yet. Or you recently filed your return and it's not processed yet, / you recently filled out the non-filers tool and it's not processed yet. So you're really just going to have to wait in pretty much every situation and check it every few days. But ultimately, you will receive the payment if you are eligible for the payment. It might be a delay. It's upsetting because it seemed like everyone was going to get them all like 1 week, 2 weeks ago, but it's panning out that it's going to be a kind of extended period where everyone receives these. Finally, the last question. Chris Raymond asks, are you Edge from the WWE? I get this question like 100 times a day. No, I'm not Edge from the WWE. So that's all I have for today. Until next time, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.